and welcome back to the channel. I'm going to have a little bit of a rant this time around. I may even add this as just an extra video because something I saw on the internet cheesed me off. And it's about movies, and it's about my passion for movies. And I think that the people who said it need to have a good long look at themselves. In an interview for The Hollywood Reporter, Joe Russo of the directing and producing duo, the Russo brothers, tried to throw shade on cinema, and particularly cinemas. The brothers, who got immensely wealthy putting bums on seats in movie theatres, with movies like Captain America Winter Soldier, Captain America Civil War, Avengers Infinity War, and Avengers Endgame, have now hitched their wagon to Netflix. And they're making kind of okay action flicks on that streaming platform. Here's what Russo said. I've censored the swearing so that YouTube doesn't get the vapors about earthy Anglo-Saxon language. A thing to remember too is it's an elitist notion to be able to go to a theatre. It's very fucking expensive. So this idea that was created that we hang on to, that the theatre is a sacred space, is bullshit. The Russos also said, and this is such PR crap, that they're not anti-theatre, just agnostic about delivery. I have some thoughts about this because for me, cinemas have always been sacred spaces and sanctuaries. Leaving aside the current reasonable pandemic fears about sitting in a large box with germy people you don't know, there's something communal about seeing a movie in a flea pit. When I was a kid, the Saturday afternoon double feature matinees were a reprieve from the brutality and abuse I experienced at the hands and fists and leather belts of my father. My brother and I saw movies in a space full of free-range children. They were yelling, they were laughing and hanging out while B pictures showed on the screen. We got Eurospy movies, we got British comedies, American dramas, creepy monster flicks, Elvis musicals, and even a western starring Roy Orbison. In my teenage years, at 15 when I was working 40 hours a week in factories, I'd finished work at 4:30 and then I took a train into Sydney City to watch films because going home meant more abuse. I came home late at night after my father was asleep, but I saw a lot of really good films. Whenever I was unemployed, I still managed to hit the flea pits on days when the benefits came in. I would rather have seen a movie in those days than eat a meal. Cinemas were places where I could forget about my very real problems for a couple of hours and just enjoy myself. I've still got a love for cinemas, particularly old ones like the Astor in St Kilda and the Sun Cinema in Yarraville, and cinemas that have now become live theatre venues in Sydney like the Capitol and the State. They're historic places and generations of people have enjoyed themselves in these venues. Now, none of this is to say that I don't like streaming services. During the lockdowns, they were useful. For series watching, they're a significant upgrade from the old school television for people who don't use physical media, and you can binge your guts out watching a series and enjoying it and sharing it on social media. I mean, there are upsides to streaming as well. The shift in the economics of the movie industry makes them the optimum delivery system for B movies. You've got specialist subscription platforms like Shudder, and you've got wide-ranging free services like Tubi and Plex that are delivering old and new genre films to the punters. But let's get back to Mr. Russo's self-serving statement. Firstly, the brothers Russo are pushing their own product here. They make movies for Netflix, so part of their PR job is to throw shade on old-school cinemas. They're basically Ticino in 2 weeks in another town.
Because I'm an international peddler.
International peddlers. For extremely wealthy filmmakers to call attending cinemas an elitist thing is both stupid and disrespectful. Firstly, they're sitting in their nice little Hollywood bubble. Try telling a poor Indian man or woman watching a Tollywood or Bollywood movie in an un-air-conditioned cinema in Chennai, Ahmedabad or Gumla that they're being elitist. Or an Indonesian kid or a family in Burkina Faso or an old lady in Paramaribo. They're not being elitist. They're going and seeing a movie and they're sharing the love of cinema. Secondly, I'll give you 3-1 that both of the Russo brothers have home movie systems which are large enough to let them and a dozen of their friends watch films in a way that simulates a cinema, right down to the cold drinks and the popcorn machine. Thirdly, people like cinemas, particularly young people. Cinemas are where they go on dates or to hang out with their friends or to celebrate birthdays or just be unsupervised by their parents and guardians. They're also cultural hubs for a lot of communities. My local chain multiplex cinema, knowing the local demographics of where I live, show Bollywood and Tollywood movies on the big screens. There are even standees advertising them in the lobby, and we get culturally appropriate munchies in the snack bar. It's the Russo brothers themselves who are being elitist. They want the money produced by audiences watching movies to be funneled directly to Netflix. Let's think that through for a moment. That kills local economies where young people can work in cinemas, where cleaners have gigs to clean up after the popcorn eaters, and where local food and drink suppliers get a piece of the action. Here in Australia, Netflix pays very little tax, so any movies they make can reap a lot of money without them being first seen in cinemas. From a national viewpoint, it reduces Australia's tax revenues, which go to pay for roads and schools and hospitals, and all of that wonderful network of infrastructure, culture and caring that we call civilization. Yes, the streaming services do make some local productions, but not very much. So the Russos are transparently wrong, and they're part of that weird, dangerous phenomenon where real elites accuse less privileged people of being elitists. It's classic class misdirection. You see it in other realms as well. You see it in politics, in offices, in religion, in economics, in discussions of climate change, in women's rights issues and gender issues. Rich people are the worst. Look, keep going to cinemas if that's your thing. Buy physical media if you can. Physical media works because you can't cancel a disc when you're halfway through the final season of a show you love, but a streaming service can. And if you have physical media, some capricious algorithm can't retroactively censor a classic film because some idiot finds something in it offensive. Historically, VHS and Betamax gave the users control of the media they watched, enjoyed, and owned copies of. Movie studios are trying to take back that control because they can, and they make more money from it if they do. And if the greedy bastards do win the battle, you can still come out ahead because if you have physical media, their value is going to skyrocket. Unaltered copies of movies have an intrinsic value. A legitimate VHS copy of an abhorrent but historic movie like Song of the South is currently going for around $130 on eBay. If you can afford physical media, if you've got a player, buy it. If you can't, and you don't choose to, go and watch a movie in a cinema, if only to piss off Joe Russo. Let me know what you think about what Mr. Russo said, and how you feel about cinemas, and how you feel about owning copies of movies. It isn't always going to be the same story for everybody, and I appreciate people have constraints of money, constraints of storage space, and other things. But I like owning copies of movies, and I like going to cinemas, and I will continue to do both. Anyway, look after yourselves. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. Stay cool up in the Northern Hemisphere. Stay warm down here. Watch some good movies, watch some bad movies. Don't listen to rich people when they tell you what you should think about movies. And I'll catch you next time.